Every weekday morning, long before most people stop to think, America begins to move. Cars line up at traffic lights. School buses roll out of quiet neighborhoods. Delivery trucks follow familiar routes. Office workers sip coffee as they merge onto highways. And above rivers, rail lines, and busy roads, bridges do what they have always done, quietly carry the weight of daily life. For the people crossing them, bridges are not engineering marvels. They are not objects of fear or fascination. They are simply part of the routine. A few seconds of travel, a familiar view out the window, and then life moves on. On this particular bridge, thousands of people crossed every single day. Parents drove their children to school. Construction workers headed to job sites. Commuters checked the time, worried about traffic, meetings, and deadlines, not the structure beneath their wheels. No one slowed down to study the steel. No one questioned the concrete. No one wondered how old the bridge was, or when it had last been inspected. They didn't need to, because in America, bridges are supposed to be safe. They are inspected. They are regulated. They are approved by engineers, signed off by experts, and monitored by systems designed to prevent failure. That belief, quiet, unspoken, and deeply ingrained, is what allowed this bridge to fade into the background of everyday life. It was not famous. It was not new, and it was not considered dangerous. It simply worked. In the early hours of the morning, traffic moved steadily across its lanes. Some drivers had crossed this bridge thousands of times without ever thinking about it. Others were using it for the first time, trusting it without hesitation. That trust was automatic, because Americans grow up believing something very specific about the world around them. If a system is still operating, if it hasn't been closed, if it's still in use, then someone, somewhere, has decided it is safe. Bridges are not personal choices. They are public promises. Promises backed by inspections, by reports, by professional judgment. And for decades, this bridge had carried that promise without incident. From a distance, everything appeared normal. The structure stood firm against the skyline. Traffic flowed. Lights reflected off steel and concrete. There were no alarms, no warning signs, no barriers or detours. To the public eye, there was nothing unusual about that day. But infrastructure rarely fails loudly at first. It fails quietly, not in dramatic moments, but in small details. A design decision made decades earlier. A component size just slightly too small. A maintenance issue postponed to a later budget cycle. These are not things commuters see. They are not things families think about. And that is precisely why they are so powerful. Because modern life depends on systems we are taught not to question. This bridge had a history. It had been designed according to the standards of its time. It had been built to carry a specific amount of weight. It had been modified, repaired, and adjusted as traffic patterns changed. Each change seemed minor. Each decision appeared reasonable on its own. New lanes, heavier vehicles, additional equipment. Nothing dramatic, nothing urgent. And yet, over time, the bridge was no longer the same structure it had once been. Not visibly, not obviously, but structurally. Those changes did not make headlines. They did not concern the public, because the bridge was still open. And in the American mind, open means safe. For families, the bridge was just another part of the day. A place where conversations continued mid-sentence, where radios played, where children looked out the window without a second thought. No one explained to them how the bridge worked. No one needed to. The system had already done that work on their behalf. Engineers had signed off. Inspectors had filed reports. Authorities had allowed traffic to continue. That invisible chain of decisions created something far more powerful than steel or concrete. It created trust. And trust is what makes failure so difficult to imagine. This is what makes stories like this resonate so deeply with Americans. Not because of the moment when things go wrong, but because of all the moments before when nothing seemed wrong at all. The danger was not dramatic. It was not sudden. It was slow, invisible, and hidden beneath layers of normalcy. And that normalcy is what allowed everyone to move forward without hesitation. If you had asked anyone crossing this bridge that morning whether they felt unsafe, most would have looked at you with confusion. Why would they? The bridge had passed inspections. It had been declared structurally sufficient. It had remained open to the public. There were no flashing signs saying warning, no announcements urging caution. Life continued exactly as expected. And in America, Expectation is everything. Because when systems work long enough, people stop seeing them as systems. They become background. They become assumptions. And assumptions are rarely questioned until they fail. What makes this story especially important is not that a bridge collapsed. It's that, for years, nothing appeared urgent. Warnings did not look like emergencies. Reports did not sound alarms. Concerns were noted, documented, and filed away. There was always more time. And that belief, that there is always more time, is one of the most powerful illusions in modern infrastructure. At this stage, no one was asking hard questions. Not commuters, not families, not the public, because there was no reason to. The system was still functioning. And in the American mind, functionality equals safety. But systems do not fail based on belief. They fail based on physics, based on load, based on stress, based on decisions made long before the consequences are visible, and long before the public becomes aware. This bridge did not collapse because of a single mistake. It did not fail because of one careless moment. It failed because of a chain of quiet decisions, each one small enough to seem manageable, but together, enough to push the structure beyond what it could safely support. That story was already unfolding, even as traffic moved steadily above, even as life continued uninterrupted. What makes this moment so important is not what people knew. It's what they didn't. Because when people trust a system completely, they stop imagining failure as a possibility. And that is when failure becomes the most devastating. In the next part of this story, we step away from the morning commute and look beneath the surface. We examine how this bridge was designed, what standards it was built under, and how a structure once considered reliable slowly became vulnerable, without ever appearing unsafe to the people who depended on it. Because to understand how this bridge failed, we first have to understand why everyone believed it wouldn't.